Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And it is time for 2024's interim report. Yes, this was Luke's idea. I have to give him full credit. He approached me, maybe a month ago now, and said, hey, we should do like a best of the year so far kind of thing. And then, as that kind of popped up, I started to see other channels were doing it. I know this was like a thing for movie reviewers on YouTube that they would do this every once in a while, but we've never done it. So it was just kind of like, let's do it. And I know our buddy over at the Cobwebs channel just posted his. His was really good. So I was excited to kind of see what's going on in 2024 so far and really talk about just some of the strong picks, some of the things, and really get a gauge for how are we feeling about this year's horror selection thus far. Luke, take us away here. How do you want to start this out? What were you thinking about this interim report?
Well, as we always bunch in so many films at the end of the year, and you know how it works is you're pretty much kind of switching placement almost all the way up until we record. And there are so many great films out there, but trying to fit in 10 that we've seen. And yes, we do the honorable mentions, but we only do a select few. And it's fun to see how that changes. Your lineup changes as you go throughout the year, because you could have a strong 10 lineup with, at the end of April, depending on releases. And then, by the end of the year, it's completely different. All those have been, they all fall by the wayside. You never really get to talk about them. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of just take a look at what we've seen thus far, as we usually get bombarded with screeners of a lot of things that maybe we would not regularly see. So, I think going into this, it would probably be best to talk about some of the stronger picks that we've had and some things that we think we could very well be talking about by the end of the year. And then also maybe I know there have been some terrible releases this year. So taking the good with the bad, we can talk about some of the worst. But I'd like to hear, starting off, I know we have a new review up on the channel, which is a very interesting film, very experimental, in a
Mm-hmm.
violent nature.
No doubt top 10 for me on that one. I think like there are certain films where it's like, unless it's really strong, and there's like so many more that overtake things where it's like, I kind of give myself in my mind like a grandfather top 5, top 3 of just like these ones for sure have got to make it, just because of how I felt when I first watched them. I know this one, and then one we'll talk about a little bit later, was definitely in that list so far. And I think like this one again, for it being so experimental, for it being so different, and kind of a reinvigoration of that slasher subgenre. I really like what they did. Not everything worked. Not everything stuck the landing for me, especially towards the end of that film. But it's still competent enough, and it still puts a smile on my face. I mean, you know me, I don't necessarily watch a lot of films like over and over again when we get screeners. Usually it's like we have too much to do. And like you usually give almost all of our films 2 watches. So it's like good on you for that, honestly. But like I went and watched this thing 3 times before we sat down and did our review. So that just shows how much like this film is really affecting me and really sticking with me.
Yeah, it's such a compelling concept, and to really wander down that experimental avenue with a slasher, that we have never seen before. And I know we've talked about it to a full extent in our discussions within a violent nature, and how that might not work on paper, but the way Chris Nash approached it, it really did facilitate just this new invigoration. I think of, will this work with other slashers? Probably not. I think this is kind of um, maybe kind of a melding of the traditional route and that experimental route. But, I think In a Violent Nature's kind of cornered the market on this kind of version of that slasher. But, I think when we look at that kind of creativity, and we can point to Skinamarink of last year, that certainly didn't work for everybody, very divisive, because it was a different approach. But that one easily made it into my top 10 at the end of the year, because it was different. It was experimental. It was something we don't see regularly in a feature film like that. So, I think In a Violent Nature certainly has a lot going for it. It does have those wild kills that, everyone will be talking about by the end of the year. But, the all around creativity of bringing something different to that slasher subgenre. I can easily say that's in my top 10 now, and I think it'll be making an appearance by the end of the year. But when we talk about creativity, another one that I think might end up on my list, it certainly is now, is stop motion. I think that one
Hmm.
was just such an intriguing concept. It was something so different that kind of, using the claymation aspect of it, and I, I would say a terrifying aspect of it, where it was very unsettling and very different. I think that one has really stuck with me. I think by when it came out, I think a lot of people had talked about it, but I think maybe flew under the radar for a general audience. But I think that one may um, become a cult classic, just because of how different it is and how terrifying it is, and just the imagery there is really wild. So that is another one that I think could end up on my list as well.
Yeah, dude, honestly, that was right where I was gonna go next with this, was going to be stop motion, because I feel like with everything that we've talked about since then, it's kind of getting lost in the conversation. I know Cobwebs talked about it a little bit on his, it definitely made his, and I've seen it pop up in a few other spots, but as a general audience goes, it's kinda crazy to think this thing is just now, I think as this video is posted just a few days ago, popped up on Shudder. So I think this is gonna finally get its second life a little bit, where people are going to be able to check it out with just their subscription instead of having to pay for it. And that's one of those things where I really want people to pick this thing up. I know our buddy Alex over at BTV was huge on this one, and like I was like right there with him. I know you were right there with him, where it's like we really enjoyed it, but the more you talk about this movie, the more you get into just kind of the little details of it, it's one of those that really grows on you, and I was super pleased with it.
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting to see a bigger audience get introduced to this film, just because of that uniqueness aspect of it. And I keep going back to it's terrifying. I wasn't really prepared, even though seeing that trailer, which is terrifying in itself, of seeing this long drawn out sequences of these stop motion claymation characters. It was really unsettling in the way that they used them, and the um things that they're made from and things like that are just really, really odd to me. So, I'm excited to see where that one's going to end up on a lot of people's list, because I can see that one being talked about. Such a strong release, I think, for 2024. But another one I think we got to talk about, that I think a lot of it met with a little controversy, I think, across the internet at the time, was Late Night with the Devil.
Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Darrow.
That one was so anticipated for so many people. Then it kind of came out that, they may have used some AI generated things, but that's kind of since settled down because of when it was used and how it was used and everything. So, I hope that one does not, have a strike against it when it comes to picking out these films, just because, I mean, we gushed about it. It was a must see for us. So, that one, when we talk about confidence in terms of reappearing at the end of our list, I got to say, Late Night with the Devil, as of now, I could easily see it sits at my number one spot for my favorite of the year so far, but I could easily see this one confidently being in the top 5 by the end of the year.
That's right where I was about to say too, is that's still my number one. I've seen a lot of good stuff since then. And there are a lot of things like Nosferatu, Terrifier 3, obviously, that I'm so excited for, that like could very well top it, but I'm still sitting here just very impressed with that movie. I'm eager to own a Blu-ray for it, hopefully a 4K, and just be able to sit down and throw this thing on whenever I feel like. I really want to dive into like some special features and see what the behind the scenes was like. I hope they do some more with that. But yeah, for me, honestly, like between that and In a Violent Nature, it's like those are the two that like I want to learn more about. I want to get deep into just like what it took to put these films together. Because again, they're both taking very unique approaches to kind of like the same thing we've seen. Because let's not forget, Late Night with the Devil is still technically, if you not really technically, it is a found footage movie. So it's like, but just the approach they give to it's very different, and I really enjoyed it. I have seen, and I know we warned about this, a little bit of pushback from people who are like deep found footage fans saying it doesn't qualify. But the biggest thing about it is that they say it's a great film nonetheless. So that's always good for me. I'm glad that people are able to see past it, even if they don't get on board with the full found footage vibe of it.
Yeah, and whether it qualifies and meets the requirement to technically be found footage or not, you got to give them props for committing to the bit, so to speak, where, you see these characters always on. You see Jack Delroy being Jack Delroy during the night owls and late night hosting, all that. And then you kind of have these breaks of a little bit behind the scenes. You kind of get to see him out of character a little bit. And then you're kind of dealing with this supernatural element to it. So I think whether it qualifies for found footage or not, I think, that aspect of creativity is easily there just because of what they did give us. It's something that, moves really quick. It's just a real delight to watch because it does hone in on those 70s vibes and it knocks that out of the park.
Oh yeah.
So, visually so intriguing. That one I could see being on a lot of people's lists as long as we don't let the controversy, so to speak,
And
get the best of it.
I think it's died down a good bit. I think
Yeah,
like a lot of people seem to have an understanding with it. I know there are still people who are going to come out and say like, oh, it's opening the door for, we can't let it open even just a little bit. And I understand everybody's kind of, you know, i- issue with the AI stuff and why we don't want that to drive through. Obviously, we're creatives ourselves. It's something we're very passionate about, but I think like there's so much good work that got put into this film that it's like I'd hate to really see everything about it falter just because of that experimentation. One thing I did want to bring up that I don't necessarily know where it will fall. I think it might fall towards the bottom of my top 10 this year. We'll have to wait and see, but a film that was seriously the underdog of 2024, in my opinion, had so much going against it. And I know we were championing it, we were championing the team. I gotta talk about Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey too. Talk about exceeding expectations, and even us who were kind of like, in the know about some of the things that were going to happen, some of the work that was going on behind the scenes. It still was one of those where it's like, damn, they have really stepped it up a notch. And I gotta say, like, looking into all the stuff from the Twisted Childhood universe, even though the concept is still a little hokey in some spots, it's like they're really putting their best foot forward. If you follow the Neverland Nightmare social media, they're posting photos of the set. Some of those costumes, dude, for Neverland Nightmares, seriously, some spine tingling stuff. Scott Chambers is really showing his best foot forward with that one.
yeah, and what a surprise comeback, so to speak, for
Hmm.
Blood and Honey too. Is when we um got through last year. That was an early release that came out. The original came out, within the first half. I think was it a March
I
maybe
think it was
some
like February, March.
February,
Yeah.
March, yeah. One of those early year releases, and met with a lot of criticism. We were a little kinder to it, I think, during our initial review there. But this one, I think, surprised everybody with them kind of re-racking and really telling the story that they wanted to tell and kind of, putting their own creative touches on it with a little bit bigger budget and then kind of that, announcement that there's going to be so many other stories that are going to be attached to um, this twisted child universe, and that's Neverland Nightmare certainly looks rather intriguing. It's kind of odd to say this, but it gives me almost like House of Wax vibes. If you've seen that, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. When does that one come out? Does that have a release date? Is that next year?
Supposedly that's 2024,
Okay.
but I would think that maybe they would push it. I don't know. I don't want them to rush any of these.
Yeah.
I think like they're wanting to strike while the iron is hot, but I say just take your time. I think the audience that you have is built in. I mean, so many of you guys hopped on board with our spoiler discussion and our review for Blood and Honey too. So it's like you guys are all big fans of this. You're all supporters with us. So I think that that's something that like as long as they take their time and they keep putting in efforts like this. Now, we're not saying that Blood and Honey 2 is like breaking the mold or being like one of those films that is going to make everybody's top 10, but I mean, for us, it is such a step up that it needs to be at least mentioned and commended because they are doing what they said they would do. And that's so rare. I feel like today's like day and age where you take something that falls in the public domain, it's so easy to do a cash grab. But the fact that they actually went forth and said, no, we are going to put our best foot forward here and do the best we can to make something worthwhile. I still sit here and say I'm excited for that to hit streaming soon so I can pick up a copy and then hopefully get a Blu-ray soon. So that way I can just watch it again because it's just such a fun movie. Like it really is. It's quick and it's just so fun.
I I imagine myself having this on while I'm handing out candy to trick or treaters
Yeah,
and toys.
right?
And I think that's just going to be a fun Halloween flick to put on. It's again surprised of the quality that they brought here. They're really showing that they have a long-standing narrative as they're opening up with all these other characters here, and that they do have a story to tell. I mean, Blood and Honey 2 left us on a series of unanswered questions that make us eager to actually see Blood and Honey 3. I think. After walking out of the theater for Blood and Honey, for the most part, a lot of people were rolling their eyes about a sequel coming down the line. But after the seeing this one and the creative spin that they were able to put on it, I think a lot of people are more so excited for that third installment. Plus, with everything else that we have with the whole universe coming. Now, you mentioned the word rare. I wanted to bring up that 2024 already is the year that we got 2 Spider films.
That's your spider!
They are both quality for different reasons, I think. Sting for me wouldn't make my top 10 right now, I don't think. I think, I don't think it would be at the end of the year top 10, but I think, this would be on my list of rewatchability for the year, because this is something that I thought was a lot of fun. It was tongue in cheek. It really leaned into that 80s vibe. I had a lot of fun with it. But Infested, I think that one, from a social commentary aspect, from a tension perspective, from a visual perspective, that one easily makes my top 10 right now. And I could see that one maybe in the back half, depending on how strong these other releases are going to be in 2024.
Man, if you want to see like the duality of just where I sat with both these films, like you need to go back and watch our Sting and our Infested review back to back, because I loved Sting for how fun it was and just how 80s and how much the practical effects were just like so prominent and they sold me. It really feels like we compared it to things like the tones of Monster Squad, where it's a child-led film and it's got that kind of not hard R, but it's got that R-rated edge. So it's like they're able to show the gore and there's a little bit of language and stuff. So it really did cement itself as one of those kind of throwback, really well done, just spider adventure films in an apartment building. And Infested was actually a pretty serious, like you said, political, tone drama that scared the piss out of me. Like, my God, I hated those spiders in that movie, how quick they were, how they crawled up your arm. I knew I was in for some great tension and some really skin crawling moments just from that first sequence when they're looking for the spiders in the desert. And oh man, it just got worse and worse. I will say the thing that kind of hurt Infested a little bit is that the spiders got bigger as they went along. And I felt like they were so much scarier as they got smaller, as Sting has the opposite effect where it got more fun as the spider got bigger. And it's just really funny. And you're right, they were both quality films, both films I'm going to own. And as where I sit right now, yeah, I think that Sting will be in my honorable mentions for sure. Infested, I think, has to find a spot in my top 10 just for how scared I was watching that movie. Very rarely do I have to turn a movie off. That was one of them.
Yeah, I think 2024. If you look back on anything, I think you get to see how versatile the arachnid subgenre is, so to speak. Because it does have a lot to offer. I'm hoping we waited so long to get 2 quality spider films. I'm hoping we don't have to wait that long again. But the last one that I have on my list that I wanted to talk about was last year we got, at this time, we had gotten Renfield. We'll get Last Voyage of the Demeter a little bit later on. I think toward the end of the summer. Now, we did already get Abigail, which I got to be honest, was not sold on the trailer. It did not look very interesting to me. I thought the best hook of the film was already given away with the child Abigail being the vampire. But I think that film had so much to offer from just a fun perspective, and bringing that vampire lore and kind of bringing prominence, I guess, back to the vampire subgenre, because, I thought going into this one, I didn't think it was going to have too much to offer, but visually it's a lot of fun. I think the ensemble cast is phenomenal. They play so well together, and it's got just great gore overall. So that one, I think it's a fun pick for me. I'm gonna have to see again how strong these other releases are gonna be at the later half of the year. But Abigail is certainly one that I had a lot of fun with. So if it doesn't appear in my actual top 10, certainly in my honorable mention.
Yeah, I think this one is going to be in my honorable mentions. I do feel like there's already a few films that I'm going to have to bump it for. But again, I was with you. I wasn't completely sold on this. We weren't the biggest fans of the last two Scream entries, but we really liked Ready or Not. So I didn't know where we were going to sit with the Radio Silence team on this one, but they did really bring some fresh energy to this concept. And again, it was one of those that really felt fun and very 80s inspired. But I got to say, the cast here was definitely the highlight. Dan Stevens, I walked out of that gushing about him. Catherine Newton was another great standout there. But yeah, I mean, talk about a year. Kevin Durand having the 1-2 punch of this and then Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I saw, and I gotta say he kills it in both films, but they're just such different characters. And I gotta say I enjoyed Abigail a lot. I'm excited to watch Abigail again. But it does just kind of like for me, I don't know if that was ever going to be top 10 material for me, just because of where I kind of sit with my version of vampires. I kind of like
You're waiting
either
for Nosferatu. We got you.
I know. I like that. I like my last voyage of the Demeter stuff. But like, when it comes to that, this is probably as close as we're gonna get to getting there around like a Lost Boys or like a Near Dark, where it's like it's kind of that modern, updated version where they have some fun with it and they throw a few little tricks and tools in there that I thought were very cool for the vampire subgenre.
Yeah, I think that one has a lot to offer, especially when I can kind of be a slog to get through so many different vampire flicks nowadays, just because I feel like we've seen so many in the theater. You're beaten over the head with the same exact lore with not too much of a story. But this one really did bring its own unique flavor to it. And, not being the biggest fan of the last two Scream installments, I wasn't really sure what Radio Silence was bringing to us. And plus, we got to mention the last appearance of Angus Cloud.
Mhm.
Which was always great to see. So that one had a lot to offer for me. Dylan, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
Just a couple to rattle off the top here. We won't dive into them because I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about them at the end of the year. But like for me, I want to talk about like Frogman really delivered on its concept and was a lot of fun. I saw Civil War, which I mean, seriously, what a return to form for Alex Garland for not being the biggest fan of Men. That might be my favorite Alex Garland movie. And then, one that was recommended was Low Lifes. And that was another one where it was just kind of like, what a surprise. Like, I mean, it's not breaking the mold or anything for me, but it sure is a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. And there's a quality to that film that I wasn't expecting from that. And I think the movie that I will last mention that everybody has been kind of hearing a lot about and has been kind of taking at least the deep roots of the horror subgenre on YouTube by storm is The Coffee Table. Yeah, it's pretty intense, pretty wild. And I definitely think that if you are in for something a little hard to watch, that one is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Coffee Table is a rough watch. It's very psychological. It really does build that tension, so you got to really sit with it. I'm hoping a lot of people start uncovering that film. I can see that one appearing on a lot of lists by the end of 2024. And I do got to mention Frogman as well. I think that one, for me, when we talk about creativeness and just bringing something different to the table, and I think they did that very well. And you mentioned it, delivering on the concept of what we do get at the closer toward the end of the film. I think pleases a lot of fans, and I think being such a low budget film and not even being on my radar prior to watching that one, what a pleasant surprise that was. Frogman fucks, but other than that, like, yeah, it's a great film. I think that one, in terms of delivering terror, I may fall in the later half of the back half of the top 10, but I think that one's going to be in the conversation at the very least for honorable mention. So, fairly strong year thus far. We still got a huge lineup of releases. We have Terrifier 3 coming down in October. We already mentioned Nosferatu, Alien Romulus coming out. So we have, and of course, Stranger's Chapter 2.
Long Legs, Cuckoo. Don't want to
Stranger's
talk about
Chapter
chapter 2.
Chapter
I'm
2.
just saying.
That's all we're talking about.
it's rough. If you guys want to hear maybe our worst of 2024 so far, that would be a much shorter video. But yeah, it's yeah, there's been a couple of stinkers in there. But you know, we're all about film celebration and not bashing people too hard. But yeah, man, God, that was why'd you have to bring that up? Now I'm depressed. This is
You
such
got
a
to take
nice
the good with
list.
the bad. Come on.
Such a nice list, and now I got to think about that. But yeah, no, you're right, dude. Like, there's still so much to come. I know Shudder, honestly, of all the streaming services this year, we were big Screen Box boys, all of 2023. And like, I know they've got some that are coming up here at the later half of the year that they're really excited to push. But I mean, Shudder has just been consistent this year, and they got another one coming up soon called The Devil's Bath, which I'm excited to see. So we'll have to wait, see how these pan out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of 2024.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, guys, got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. Like we said at the start, we have our recent review for In a Violent Nature up for you now. We have a spoiler review coming out very soon for that, if not already out. And yeah, we have some more stuff on the horizon. So get ready for that. And until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.